check that we are on. Just give me a second to make sure that it comes through. Does say live. And there we are. Okay, all set, Julia.
Okay. Wonderful. Ed, are you on and taking notes, or is anyone else taking notes tonight?
I could if you want me to.
Yeah, I think that. If it doesn't.
Unless somebody else wants to jump into the fray.
Ed, I can do it if you like, since Catherine's doing this.
Okay.
I can also take notes if you'd like.
Okay, sure.
You do the slides, Catherine. I'll take the notes.
Okay. All right.
All right, Ed, you participate. That's your deal.
I'm going to sit back, relax, and put my feet up on the desk.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, welcome to our virtual meeting of the Sustainable Advisory Group on November 3rd. It is 6:36, starting a few minutes late. Catherine, do you want to go to the next slide, please? Today we're going to do a land acknowledgement, as we have been doing, and I don't know, I think Kim last time asked if someone else wants to do it, so I'm not going to put her back on the spot, but does anyone else want to do the land acknowledgement? We'll have that person do it in just a second. Then we're going to talk about our news on Sustainable CT, and then we'll start just going through how far we've gotten so far. You were just supposed to draft some initial thoughts about the subgroups, and we'll start to present out to one another. And I just want to really reiterate, when we get to this section, it does not need to be baked. So don't worry about that. And if your slide isn't even filled in, that's fine too. Just let us know where things stand. So then we'll do a roundtable at the very end, and we'll talk about next steps. That's our agenda for today. Any amendments to the agenda, things you guys don't see or wanted to see? I'm going to double check. Looking at everyone's faces. I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand saying they want to amend the agenda. Great, we're going to consider it approved. Next to our land acknowledgement, does anyone want to take over the land acknowledgement for this week?
I promised that I would do it. So this is Rachel.
You're on.
It's short and sweet. We acknowledge the first peoples who inhabited the lands that is now West Hartford, especially the Tungus tribe and the other Algonquin-speaking tribal nations and indigenous peoples that were here before us and who cared for the land well and provided us with the bounty that we enjoy today. And we acknowledge that, and we look to improve our own stewardship of this land, and that is why we're gathered here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Perfect. Thank you for volunteering to do that. Catherine, I think that's actually the next slide, so you'll probably be able to go 2 ahead. All right, over to our other Catherine. Catherine has some great news for us that she wants to share. This is over to you, Catherine.
Yeah, well, I think I've shared the news already, or hopefully you might have heard. We got silver. We got our certification. Yeah, Sustainable Connecticut announced all the certified communities. You can see a list of them there. There are 23 certified communities, some at the bronze level, some at the silver highest level in the program. Certification is good for 3 years, so it's effective through December 31st, 2024. That doesn't mean that you can recertify anytime before then if they happen to come out with a higher gold level, and it also doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to do actions because again, anything within a 3-year period qualifies for the next round of certification. So
Right.
moving on, the town will be issuing a press release. There will also be, I know that Ronnie Newton is working on a WeHeart article about it with some quotes from various people. There will be awards for all of the certified communities, which will be given out at the luncheon at the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities Annual Convention, which is on November 30th at Mohegan Sun. I don't expect to go to that. I'm sure whoever will be there on behalf of West Hartford will accept the award at the luncheon. Sustainable Connecticut did mention that there will be other kind of visibility opportunities to provide recognition for communities, and they're going to also have a celebratory event in April next year.
Wonderful.
So,
that is so exciting. How did the mayor react? How did Matt react? How did everyone react when they heard it?
yeah, they're very excited. There were kind of emails flying around when Sherry and I got the email, and we kind of forwarded it on to the team. So that they're also very appreciative of the work that and the help that you guys gave us, and that I think will be reflected in some of the quotes you'll see in some of the articles coming out.
Wonderful. And do we have any idea when gold will be around? Is that like a 2-year out thing, or like they don't have one yet, right?
Yeah, they haven't really said. Maybe they'll make some announcements soon. You know, it's a lot of work for them to review all these applications and get through it. So I think this August application period is really the big one. So after this is when they kind of hunker down, go through some of the feedback they've received from the last round of certifications, and try and kind of update and revamp the program. Yeah. So.
And I see
So
there's
I
a
just
second
wanted-
here.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of feedback in case you were interested, a little debrief on our application. We submitted 770 points, of which 725 were approved. And I just went through, so we got 0 points instead of 30 points for 2 watershed restoration projects that we submitted. One was for one was by leisure for, one was, oh, now I can't even remember what they were for. One was engineering for Trout Brook. No, it wasn't Trout Brook, a waterway. Anyway, I can go back and look at what they were.
Catherine, you should be able to see it. I see the slide. I forwarded to it. No, you don't see that forwarded slide?
What slide?
Wow.
No. She sees the slide. She's just talking about this specific.
Yeah, go back. I can't remember where the restoration projects were. Yeah, go back one, Catherine.
I'm trying to, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, 2 of our watershed restoration projects were not, need some revision, the write-ups. One more ahead.
Yeah.
There we go. Because our descriptions of them and our documentation didn't adequately explain the benefit of the projects, or really hone in on how we did the native species vegetation restoration. So it wasn't that they didn't like the projects, they just wanted a little more information. So in a future application, those projects are great, and they really liked them. They just wanted a little more documentation. And then we only received 5 instead of 15 points for one of the homeless actions, which was just around training, because I guess I didn't read the fine print, and the training actually had to be by our specific designated staff liaison, not just general staff. So that's why we lost some points there, but we did receive points for that action. We were just deducted a few. And then we received only 20 points instead of 25 for our climate vulnerability assessment that was done in conjunction with the Nature Conservancy. And I'm not sure why. That might have been a math. It looked to me like there were 25 points in that category, but it might have been a math error on my part or their part, but I'm not going to worry about 5 points. So there we are. But I just wanted to, share with you guys too, that in my mind, this is still just the tip of the iceberg, because there are over 2,000 points, possible points in the Sustainable Connecticut program. And, I'll just put out there, I was looking through some of the other certified towns, and Greenwich, I think, was the one with the most points. They got 1,025 points towards their silver certification, so there's always room for improvement. And just to point out to you guys, if you want to view or download our application, our final submission report, or other towns, they're all available through this link, which takes you directly to the Sustainable Connecticut website.
Great. And silver was how much again? 400 something?
Yes, you only need 400 points towards silver. Yep. So we got almost double.
We're in good shape. Okay, well, great job, everybody. And congratulations, Catherine, and
Yeah.
to everybody in West Hartford.
Exciting.
Hope
And
that
then I just had one more slide tonight. If we want to fast forward. Again, this is my continual reminder just for you guys. There's a lot of great information. Stay connected with Sustainable Connecticut. Sign up for their newsletter. Look at their training and events calendars. I went there. I sent you guys a few links, but there are so many amazing transit-oriented and mobility things this month, including the multimodal summit. But there's a lot of great stuff out there this week. I'll send another email. I didn't want to send you guys like 5 emails in one day. And also I wanted to remind you guys, don't forget that anyone, that includes any one of you as a West Hartford resident or any nonprofits that you work with, any school that you work with, anyone can start a Sustainable Connecticut Community Match Fund project. So don't forget about that funding resource. It works like a GoFundMe site, but it includes a dollar for dollar match by Sustainable Connecticut funds. So essentially you're doubling your money. And so I thought I'd just remind you guys of that, especially as we start to get to priorities and things we think the town should implement, or maybe it's something that we can implement outside of the town, but don't forget about this resource for funding.
Thank you, Catherine. Does anyone have any questions? Comments? Truly, great job, Catherine. This is really cool.
Great job, everyone. It was the town and everybody.
Great.
I don't know, man. Greenwich 300 points ahead of us. We got to catch up to them.
Yeah, front and center in all of our messaging going forward, I think.
Yeah. Great. And I'll say this too. It's actually kind of fascinating to look through some of those town reports, because it's really fascinating where the points are that people went for and were awarded. The points West Hartford got are different, very different than the areas Greenwich focused on, and Glastonbury and other people. So it's actually kind of fascinating to read through. And it's exciting too, because, as we step beyond what we've done into new territory, there are examples out there, and there are experts and people we can collaborate with in other municipalities who've done that action. So you can get sucked into it. It can be a time suck when you're on that website kind of checking stuff out, but it is kind of fascinating for people.
Catherine, this is Kim.
Yeah.
Is there anything that caught your eye? Anything you want to share? Like, speaking of Greenwich,
Well, there are a bunch of communities who are focused more on education around watershed and gardens and things like that, and water conservation, and areas that we did not put in points on our applications for. That was something I did notice. But it was just, and again, this was in a quick check. I'm trying to think what some other things that jumped out at me were. There were a lot of people focused on healthy food systems, and there were also some towns who were operating more in the area of job networks, sustainable job networks. Anyway, I can't remember who was doing what. Yeah.
Seems like a place for us to go mine some ideas. Ted has his hand up as well. Ted, do you want to go, or is that an old hand?
Oh, that's a new hand. Thanks. I don't think my camera is working, right?
No.
Or is it? Okay. I don't know why my camera is not working, but I'll just verbalize. I'm just curious. The Sustainable Connecticut Matching Funds, can So if a town wanted to apply for one of those matching funds and say they budget a certain number of dollars for a special program and it's town money, can a town apply for a matching fund?
Yes, unless they've changed the rules, and to be honest, I would direct you to Abe at Sustainable Connecticut for the definitive answer. But the original, when I last heard about the program, yes, the town can put in its own funds. The town can also put in any grant funds, but the project is still subject to the requirements that there are multiple funders. So it can't just be that the town puts in budgeted funds. Well, and you know what, actually, I take that back. We'll have to defer to Abe because I feel like maybe they're trying to fund things that are not in the town's budget. So that if we had a budget, so they might, what I'm saying is they might look at funding something extra to enhance a project. So if you had funding for something, but you wanted to do something more, they might let you use that funding to leverage additional funds. But the sure way to know if you qualify is to contact Abe, the guy who runs the Sustainable Connecticut Community Match Fund. He's available by phone, email. He gets back to people very quickly and he can give you a definitive answer. And sometimes it's not black and white. Like he'll want to discuss it. There's some gray areas, and he might even take it back to the folks behind the curtain and they can discuss your
Right.
project.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
I'm gonna check one more time for hands. Anyone else? Or say what you want. Okay. All right.
Do you have Abe's contact information?
Catherine, I think you should just send it out to all of us just in case.
Okay, I will. Good idea.
Okay, let's move to the meat of the conversation. All right, so the idea today was to kind of get a rough start of the draft presentation that we might want to give to town council. And of course, we're attempting to get on the January calendar, but if we think that's too rushed, maybe we shoot for February. But regardless, we're just getting our feet wet, getting ourselves off the ground. So if you move to the next slide, this slide was really just a placeholder slide. Remember, we'll probably need like 1 to 5 slides that describe some of these things. Actually, it might even be that these are 8 or 10 slides. This is really a little bit of background about how we got to where we are. This is the setup for the town council meeting, right? That we wouldn't want to forget of the things we want to talk about. So just know this is kind of a placeholder slide. Those of us who have volunteered to figure out how this thing looks when it gets more polished, we'll have to flesh these out. So don't worry about this for today. The only reason I want to pause here is because these are kind of like, we'll go over this stuff. Does anyone see any big flags of things that you want to make sure? Oh yeah, we talked about this topic. We want to make sure it's in there. Not the priorities. Anything else that we needed to do structurally for presenting? I think we got it all here. Okay, next. Just kind of building on how we would tell the story, making sure we don't forget things. And then we would, of course, have a recap of the priorities here. And we had our 11, but then there are 2 administrative related ones that we added on during the last meeting. One is a group to talk about the future structure of the Sustainable Advisory Group, which we definitely have to present as one of the options. It's been requested by Matt. It's been requested by a few others. We really want to continue this work. So there are some of us who are going to work on that. And then there's that group that volunteered to consolidate the presentation and make it really sharp and polished and potentially also be the ones that give the presentation. So I don't know if that was originally the idea of those who signed up, but the original thought here was people who will help make the slides look tight, concise, and everything. So over the next couple of slides, what we're going to do is everybody had a priority slide. Each group was asked to at least reach out to the folks who signed up. We were all sent around that sheets, and everybody was asked to sign up for, as many as you wanted. If you wanted to sign up for all 11, you were encouraged to do so. If you wanted to do 2 or 3, that was more than sufficient. If you just wanted to sign up for 1, again, totally fine. So hopefully you got a chance to reach out to your groups. If you did not, that's also okay. But we're going to now turn it over and go through methodically each one of these different steps. And somebody from each group is going to present out kind of where you guys currently are and your initial thoughts and get some thoughts and feedback. And we're going to do that for the next, for the rest of the meeting, basically. So let's see how this goes. I haven't really thought it a ton. So I created a template on the next slide if you want to just move to it just for an example so you can walk through. And just, thought it would be easy. Name of the priority. What is it? Tell us a little bit about it. What are the short-term targets? This group looks like they did a really nice and tight polish job. I can guarantee you the ones I was more part of did not look this polished. So you were not expected to have something this polished and concise. But that said, this is a lovely slide to begin with. And so let me just pull up my list of who was on this team. This was Johannes, Ed, and Jay. I don't know which of you is going to take the lead or if all three of you are going to chat, but I'm going to turn the stage over to you and you're going to tell us a little bit about your slide and see if you have any questions for us.
So, Julia, I would be happy to walk us through this slide in just a couple of minutes. So this slide discusses complete streets, and we call attention to the fact that there's actually a law in Connecticut, which we refer to, which is the Complete Streets Act. And we felt that it was important to do that because that means that West Hartford, along with all other towns in Connecticut, need to be in compliance. So you can hold the city or the town accountable. And what we emphasized was the establishment or the building out of a network, a core network that is democratic, that is multimodal, and that tries to capitalize on non-motorized transportation. And this slide gets that across. What we point out too is that there is this act, the Complete Streets Act, and given the fact that West Hartford has now earned silver level certification, you'll see this in the first paragraph, we should really aspire to be a model for Complete Streets compliance toward gold or whatever the next level will be. We also called attention to the fact that a survey was done and a whopping 1,000+ respondents. Oh, I lost the slide here.
Can you go back, please? I'm sure that was just an accident.
The respondents emphasized and supported safe and efficient multimodal transport. And multimodal, it's a term that is used too along with complete streets, meaning a number of things, but certainly pedestrians, bicycling, but also public transport. And it's not that we're vilifying driving, but the multi modalities have to come together in a more balanced fashion. What we point out too here is that in addition to making our neighborhoods and our town as a whole more walkable, more bikeable, and therefore more livable, enhance the quality of life, we, in doing so, will help reduce the town's carbon footprint. And we threw that in because that is certainly also important in this effort. We broke it then down by pointing out three targets: the short-term, medium, and long-term. The 3-year target, and you'll see that for yourself. Starting out with a couple of arteries that we felt we ought to capitalize in: north-south bike lanes, town center to Bishop's Corner, North Main, which is now undergoing the diet, which I think is I would say a success for now, but also LaSalle, non-motorized, and see if we can build that out into kind of a year-long utopian idea here, a year-long non-motorized road. Wouldn't that be lovely? Midterm then is LaSalle again, more pedestrian crossing, safety first, safety for more vulnerable traffic participants. We also inserted an educational component a 4th grade street safety program in consultation with Bike Walk Connecticut. That would be important, as well as a 311 type program whenever there are issues that citizens want to report, such as speeding or sidewalks broken up or crashes. Then for a longer term target, as you will see, we were thinking it would be good to really build out a interconnected town-wide network, so that you don't come to a grinding halt all of a sudden on your bicycle, but that it is connected. So you build out your arteries, but you have ultimately a complete streets compliant town. What we pointed out here too is in all design, we should really capitalize on vulnerable users, bicyclists, pedestrian, but certainly also people with disabilities, which is why we injected ADA compliance. And then the further expansion of Farmington east-west, Prospect north-south, and then ultimately installing speed-reducing infrastructure, because speed is really a systemic problem in our town, certainly with regard to safety and vulnerable traffic participants. So I think that, in a nutshell, does it. Ed or Jay, add as you see fit. I should point out that it was Ed Personowski and Jay Stange who the three of us worked on this slide.
Yeah, thanks, Johannes. Yeah, we had a pretty lively discussion on this the other day. So, and I think you see the results of that. The only thing that I would add really is, well, actually, I guess two things. One, the city of New Haven released their sort of non-motorized citywide transportation plan yesterday. They're receiving public feedback on that now, and that I just found that sort of late yesterday, so we weren't able to include that. But I think that would be a nice 3-year target to come up with a town-wide non-motorized transportation plan. And then just the other thing, going back to sort of the complete streets aspect of it, there's a complete streets act sort of on the books, but I just want to make sure that if that we're able to follow through with that, and just to make sure that we have some how do I say this, incentives for the town to follow through on what is on the books. And so we're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
So I think we're going to do 4 minutes of responses from the audience. If anyone has any extra ideas you just want to throw out, maybe you guys just want to jot down and see if it will make sense as you guys continue to polish and think this through. This one's really tight and really nice, and I think we could probably all learn from you. So I hope maybe in the future we'll all be able to tightly wrap up a slide just like this. But I have 2 ideas, but I don't want to be the only one that throws ideas at you. So anyone have thoughts, reactions? We're going to do that for each group.
Can I ask a quick question? This is Rachel. When you say protected bike lanes, what kind of protected bike lanes do you mean? The bumper, the paint on the what?
So,
yeah, go ahead, Ed.
go ahead. Now, I was going to say, I think it depends on the context of the street that it's on. There are different examples of, parking protected bike lanes. So, you have that lane of parking, and then the bike lane is on the opposite side. So, you're driving, you're basically riding next to parked cars. So that acts as a buffer to the street. And then you have other bike lanes, which are, sort of, I guess, more or more open, I guess, where you have like planters or bollards. I think it really depends upon the context of the street. Again, coming from a non-engineering sort of perspective. I will say that just paint on the ground, which we currently have on a few streets in town, doesn't really offer any protection at all, and is not going to encourage people who have concerns to try and bike for their everyday activities.
Thanks so much. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, and maybe quickly, my model is Amsterdam because that's where I'm from, but I think we shouldn't try to go for that. But what you can have is the bike lane to the right of parked cars. I mean, you see that to some extent, right? But that really involves a pretty radical rethinking of roads. The other thing that helps a little more than just having a line is to paint the bike lane itself a different color, and that is what you see in Hartford. At least visually, you see that the two are separate. Not ideal, far from it, but better than just having the same black tarmac with just a separation line.
So I'm going to stop you because we have 10 more to get through, and I want to
Yeah.
give everybody some time to present and some time to get feedback. I'm going to throw my ideas in the chat. I don't want necessarily you to have to respond to it. I just want you to consider some creative art that could potentially be ways to slow things down. And then the other idea that I wanted you guys to think about is kind of last mile stuff, any other types of transportation or EV networks. So anyone else?
Hi, this is Heidi. I have, can you hear me? This
Yeah.
is Heidi. Yes, terrific. So one other idea is it is slowing down the pedestrian crossing. The timing on the lights, especially in the center and over on Park Road, are really not conducive to pedestrians, and I think that should be part of the plan as well.
I think that's a very good point. We were also talking about prioritizing pedestrian crossing so that when you hit that button, you know that it's not going to take 5 minutes for you to cross, but rather that there is some sense that pedestrians are, to the extent possible, prioritized. Also, that they are the lights signal how long the wait is, not how long the crossing time is, but how long the wait. This is done in all kinds of countries. And it's a very useful tool, and it seems to be a real possibility. So that would avoid jaywalking, for instance.
So, Johannes, I'm going to stop you.
Can I just mention one thing?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say we heard Matt Hartford talk about that there was plans to update the bicycle facilities plan.
Yep.
And I asked him why it was so narrow, a bike facilities plan. So that's one thing. But at the same time, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be nice to mention that we're aware of that initiative somewhere in here and ask that these additional items be considered in the context of that project, or that project be somehow morphed into something bigger, just so that we tie it to things that are already in the works. And then I just wanted to also comment that I like your designation of the 4th grade program as a street safety program, because they have tried many times to do a bicycle education program, and there are various reasons why that has not been able to happen in West Hartford public school system that I can't even remember why. So street safety, I think
that's kind of that's good to know. Thanks for that.
Yeah, so I like that you've called it a street safety program. I can share some of that with your group later, but it's not that there isn't appetite and interest into it. There's some logistics and inclusive issues and I think institutional issues. I can't remember. I'm not the expert.
Language matters. Framing matters.
Yes.
Okay, so to get through everybody, I'm going to start limiting us to 10 minutes, which means everyone gets 3 to 4 minutes to present, and then you're going to get the feedback. So I apologize, it's going to go a lot faster, and I'm really not trying to stifle the conversation. I just want everyone to get time to chat. Okay.
Or we could just commit to do half of them and save half if we want to have a deeper discussion, but that's
we could, but then we're going to need another time this month.
Right.
Do you want to have a quick vote on that? You guys want to do half of them to have deeper chats, and then we'll have another meeting sometime right before Thanksgiving?
But I think you're right. Let's see how the next ones go, because if they're in much more rough shape, maybe the discussion is less.
No, they're all very meaty. Everyone's very smart, coming up with great ideas. Okay. All right. Yes. And those of us are responding. We are also adding things in the chat, so we'll make sure to save that. Okay. Thank you guys so much. That was a great kicking us off in the right direction. The next group, clean and 100% renewable energy. Dan, Michael, Christine, and Catherine. Who's presenting this one?
I think I can talk through them.
Oh,
Okay, so I'll just also mention that we had a complete overlap with the priority 11, the energy efficiency group. So we met together, and this is basically both of them kind of combined together. So there won't be that extra one at the end. Save a little time. So I don't think we're quite as polished as the previous group, but we definitely have some items in here that we want to ask the council to address. So yeah, so we're generally this priority is about having the town invest in and incentivize 100% clean and renewable energy and energy efficiency. Energy efficiency also really helps to enable clean energy, more adoption of cleaner energy, because then you're using less energy in general. We met with Bernie from the Clean Energy Commission as well in our talk. So a lot of these priorities end up being very, have a good overlap with what the Clean Energy Commission is also working on. So we want to highlight that when we talk to the council. Talking about why the priority was important, first of all, addressing climate change, reducing air pollution, and then making West Hartford a leader in this area, and to really make sure that the town is ready for this energy transition in electricity and in transportation that is coming. And if they are if we're a leader in this area, I think we can capitalize on, some of the economic development that's coming. So some of these priorities touch on that as well. And I thought it would be good. We thought it would be good to highlight that, along lines of one of the other priorities related to getting the council to pass the climate emergency declaration. Taking some of these actions would be meaningful, steps in putting, resources behind that declaration to help to address climate change. So some of the targets that we identified, we sort of split them up into 3 areas. The Heat Smart slide, which is a program that the Clean Energy Commission has applied for. They have a grant to work on this upcoming year, and that's to support energy efficiency programs and clean heating and cooling. It's basically adoption of heat pump technology for heating and cooling. So the Clean Energy Commission is going to be working on that, and some of our asks here are related to asking the council to support and promote this program, by showing up to events, by promoting it on in all their various channels. And then we're also talking about considering asking them to provide some incentives. What that would actually look like, I think, is topic for further discussion. Then the area of solar, we think that's a very important priority. There's a couple specific asks related to helping to streamline permitting for rooftop solar, and then ending the moratorium on ground-mounted solar in West Hartford. Just something that I wasn't aware of, but Catherine definitely brought to our attention. And then the third priority related to encouraging adoption of EVs and including charging infrastructure. So talking about improving zoning requirements for charging infrastructure, like an example of having some requirement to have certain number of EV chargers in new parking lots that are being built, and that's a law in other towns in Connecticut. Encourage awareness adoption of electric lawn care equipment, considering incentives for electric vehicle ownership, and not necessarily telling the town what we think that might look like, but we can have some more discussion there. And then another thing is to try to make sure we have the Clean Energy Commission involved and maybe the future Sustainability Commission involved in kind of notified of new development projects so that they could provide resources to developers or builders, whomever's business owners, to help them make smarter and sustainable energy choices. So that's the quick overview. I think we'll have a little more work to do to finalize some of these items, but yeah, happy to hear everyone's comments.
Great.
And then of course, Catherine's on the call if she wants to add anything to this. I think my other two members are not here today.
Yep.
No, I think you did a great job for now, Dan. Yeah, we're still in the kind of fleshing it out phase. We met just
That's
yesterday.
Don't worry about it. It was not. Johannes and them have clearly been thinking about that for a long time. So
Well, and I mean, to be quite honest, we got sidetracked a little bit on whether on these slides we were trying to focus on things the town, like projects and programs that the town should have, or whether we were focusing on things that required the town council to do something, So we were, and what their role was. So we got a little bit stuck on that.
Did you land on the solution? That one?
No.
Yes. Catherine, I'm glad you brought that up, because even as we looked at number one, that was my question. It wasn't great information, everyone, in the first slide and this one, but I'm not quite clear myself on what our this is going to come off sounding completely dense, but I'm not clear on what our objective is. I mean, what this starts to look like to me, and some of these obviously are in different stages of development. This has support from there's some infrastructure, the Clean Energy Commission, but for a few of the mini groups that I was a part of, great, we've just created another laundry list of things for someone, what we're going to go through it, and no one's going to do anything because they're big things. And I'm just, is that, so I guess my question is our goal to make it clear to the town that we need more support and vocal support in our town, or is our goal to just present this wish list? I'm not sure. We don't have to answer that maybe right now. But
Beyond that, I have, oh, sorry.
Somebody was trying to say something. I have an opinion, but I mean, Kim, it's a great question. I believe if we're presenting to town council, we are trying to give them a summary of the things that we have learned so that they can understand what are the priorities for the town, but then very specifically giving them a list of short-term action steps that they can take. That was my perspective on this, but I understand that that hasn't been fully articulated or fully bought into. So if that's not where everyone else is, or if we want to present something different, we could definitely have that discussion. That's a very important one for us when we're determining what these slides should cover.
I can speak for the mini groups that I'm a part of, but even the short-term lists, I mean, the town won't be able to take action on them. We just don't have, there's just no resources. I mean, some of them are things that I've been actively working on and pushing and promoting for, a couple of years, and they just don't have the resources. So that's part of why I asked that question.
So when we get to your slides, maybe you point that out and we can maybe figure out if there's a way to modify it to be very clear to the town, hey, you don't have any resources around this, and the first thing you need to do is dedicate a resource. Maybe that's the ask. Maybe that's the only ask, is it's time. We need this, it's time.
Exactly.
And that's okay. That could be the most powerful thing to do, is tell the town you need somebody who's responsible for this thing. I know we just stole up a little bit of the conversation though for this priority. This priority to me has a lot of great ideas. anyone want to comment on them? I know there's some comments, Dan, just so you guys know, and Catherine in the chat that started popping up that I guess we'll leave there, but comments about.
Yep.
Are you guys comfortable moving on to the next priority? I feel like I should have said that before we close the first one.
You know, a quick comment maybe. I think in many of these slides, it's important to point to existing acts and existing laws. I
They
don't
all
want to
have-
belabor the point, but it's compliance. So what is the law that we need to
Yep.
be in compliance with? It's the Global Warming Solutions Act, and it calls for specific targets. And might that be a way to say, okay, we need to hit these targets, and this is a roadmap.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are definitely not going to have laws associated with them, but it's a really good point that if there are codes or state observations or objectives that are outlined, or local ones or federal ones, I mean, by all means, we should be pulling them forward and saying, hey, it's important for this reason.
And this one has a Connecticut Act, so I think it would be good to refer to it.
And
I put
Johannes,
that in the chat, so we'll remember it, Johannes.
and Johannes, to your point, I think you mentioned that 2 or 3 meetings ago, and so I spent a lot of time combing through the Connecticut DEP and then West Hartford Town for food scrap recycling in particular, and cut and pasted all of that for this group, and I can share that. I've been putting together a document, but it's very limited to food scraps and organics. But
Mhm.
you know, we can be doing that for all these other things, because I think you made a great point.
All right, can we move to the next one, or you guys want to keep chatting on this one? Okay, our next group was Rachel, John, Kathy, Ted, and Kim. Who is taking this one?
This is Ted. I think I can present this one. We did just meet last night. We had a really good discussion, and it ranged all over the place. We had very similar conversations about what you guys were just talking about. What are our priorities? Are we trying to, in a way, apply more pressure to the town to incentivize certain things? Is this a political act? Is it a wish list? What exactly is this? But in order to avoid that conversation right now, I'm just going to go through the slides. And Kathy Sipes was at the meeting, Jonathan Humphrey, Kim Hughes, and Rachel Virgin. It was an excellent meeting. We had a lot of great ideas, and I tried to take notes, and I tried to include as many of the ideas as possible in these slides. So I'm going to do the best I can, but if any of you guys are here and you'd like to add something or modify, please do. So this priority is urban forestry, and Kim made a really good point that this is kind of narrow, and maybe it should be a bit broader to include, you know, all of the plant biome and landscaping in town, not just necessarily trees. But when we wrote up the description, we wrote something along these lines: the focus of the subcommittee is the preservation and the growth of the native plant community of West Hartford, with a particular focus on the tree canopy. And the reason that, you know, the tree canopy is so important is that so many of them have been dying over the last few years. Thousands of mature trees in West Hartford and surrounding areas have been dying over the last few years due to climate change, but really also due to just cutting by people who are choosing to cut mature trees for a variety of reasons. And supporting and maintaining the tree canopy has a lot of benefits. Some of them are really obvious: improved air quality, lower energy costs because the trees keep us cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. There's the whole carbon sequestration benefit, the noise reduction. They reduce stormwater runoff because they absorb a lot of water during heavy rains. They control erosion. They support wildlife. You know, it's documented that a good urban canopy increases property values and improves quality of life just due to aesthetics. So if we can go to the next slide, I tried to hit all of the goals that we talked about, but I know I missed a few. We just met last night, and there were a few emails that I couldn't get to today. I had to work, so some of those may not have been included here. These are just some of the ideas we came up with. There are state grants from various agencies that will supply money for urban forestry. Now, a couple of these grants that I just heard about in the last few days, the expiration date is very close or has expired. So our short-term goal would be for the town to apply for some of these grants, either for this year or for next year. A couple of the people I've talked to in town, like Helen Rubino Turco at Leisure Services, she's been wanting to do a tree canopy survey for years just to establish a baseline to see where we're at right now. What percentage of West Hartford really has a good tree canopy over it? And is it growing or is it shrinking? We need to quantify this. We'd
And
like
what's
to,
been stopping her?
pardon?
What's been stopping her? Funding?
Probably funding or just knowing how to carry it out. And so, part of the conversation is like, who do we pressure to make this happen? Is it the tree warden? Is it Public Works? Helen works for Leisure Services. She's in charge of the parks. So this is really more of a townwide effort, maybe more of a Public Works thing. And there are different software programs where you can either use Google Maps or you can do drones, or there's various ways of doing an aerial tree survey to figure out what percentage of canopy cover you have. Why it hasn't been done yet? I don't know. I bet it hasn't been done by the vast majority of towns in West Hartford and New England, but it should be done. They've been really good. The town has been really good, at least last year, about providing space for my little project for planting of trees. The West Hartford Tree Project is basically a small independent project where we raised money and then gave away tree seedlings to residents. And then whatever wasn't claimed by residents, the town stepped forward and provided 4 parks for us to plant the leftovers in, the unclaimed trees. So that ideally would continue. Part of this is education and awareness. And so we had a good discussion last night about how much of this is education, how much of it is actually doing the work. So as a way of educating townspeople, there needs to be maybe a section on the town website with links to tree resources, arborists, videos by arborists that educate people about the benefits of pruning as opposed to absolute removal of trees. And we've spoken to a few arborists who at least, have paid lip service to the idea that pruning is the best option. And in fact, I was just talking to an arborist outside today, and his name escapes me. They were cutting trees next door. And he said, yeah, arborist tree companies actually make more money in the long run if they prune as opposed to completely removing a tree. So getting them on board and helping to educate the citizenry would help quite a bit. So those are sort of our short-term goals. Midterm, 24-month goals. Ideally, it would be great if there was some kind of restrictions on cutting, some slowing down, some kind of approval process where if healthy trees are going to be removed, they need to be replaced with younger trees, or there needs to be some way of just, depending on who wants to do the cutting, there are times when it should just be a no. If it's town property and if it's a healthy tree and there's no real safety issues, then there's all kinds of studies that show that large, mature, healthy trees sequester a lot more carbon than young ones do, and they need to be preserved. If we can go to the next slide, that'd be good.
Like you have examined the possibility of underground.
Okay, yeah. So okay, so this is another great idea. A lot of residents, they want to cut larger trees that they consider to be a safety issue, or it's shading the house, or for one reason or another, they would like to cut the large trees. And it would be nice if we could streamline a process so that residents can ask the town for advice or for trees or for assistance with planting newer, younger trees. Part of that could be funded by some of these state grants that I was talking about. And then if there was some kind of a governmental commission that regulated the cutting of mature and healthy trees in town, that would be great. And then again, in the long term, there needs to be some kind of tree stewardship strategy for the replacement and the preservation of mature trees and the replanting of young ones. If there's anyone that would like to add to that was at the meeting last night, please share. I may have forgotten something. I know Kim was there, Rachel. Did I forget anything?
I'll
Jonathan?
just add, because I'm an environmental educator and I talk to kids at least about the value of our natural environment all the time. That's really what makes it easy to take down trees. It's what makes it easy to see a tree as a commodity or as like something in the way. And so I'm obviously a huge supporter of education. As Ted said, and great job, Ted. I guess I just back to what I mentioned on the earlier slide. Ted is amazing, has accomplished so much. I just think that Ted shouldn't have to work quite so hard as a volunteer to advance projects like this. And if there was someone, you know, some structure in our town, someone he knew he could go to that would make sure he was connected with all of the town agencies, then but then also with the, you know, eye for sustainability, then, you know, that to me, that is what I would hope to accomplish by bringing this to the town's attention.
Kim, I think that you're highlighting another area that could be good for the summary slides. Again, these slides don't have to look exactly like this, but perhaps there's a big glaring like gaps the town has to address, like immediate gap. There's no contact for us. Like this one has no contact. We know there's a grounds department. We know there's this. The town needs to supply us with X, Y, or Z, you know, so make sure there's a town ask on the slide.
Okay, one last thing real quick. I need to play devil's advocate real quick. And I just have to say, I have to, you know, I went to a meeting about 2 weeks ago that was actually organized by Helen Rubino Turco and John Phillips. And John is the director of public works, and he is officially the tree warden. And it's quite possible that I'm just underinformed. You know, it's very possible that I just need to work more closely with John, and they might have these same priorities that we do. And it's very possible that they're just waiting for funding, which means the politicians are waiting for pressure to reallocate money in the budget. I mean, maybe that's what this is kind of all about, is applying pressure to the politicians so that the budget is redesigned a little bit so that more money goes to public works and projects like this.
There's a
But
lot.
I don't think it should be so hard for you to know where that stands.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments in the chat also, Ted, for you guys to take a note about. And again, Matt is under the impression that he has staff for this. So I think it's very, very reasonable for you to say it's been a struggle for us to figure out if we have resources on this. That's a very clear gap that needs to be addressed.
Well, and the fact that you wanted to address it, Helen's wanted to address it, the fact that this has been a desire, it sounds like both within the town and outside of the town for several years, and it hasn't happened, there's something broken that Matt Hart or the town council or it needs to be addressed, you know? If everyone's saying it's a priority and it's not happening, then something's wrong, in my mind. I liked Julia's idea of the town ask, and I was going to suggest it a different way, you know, that for every one of these priorities, it sounds like the group was thinking about what structure or combination of town staff or commissions, like what do you need? How do you envision the support looking like to get this initiative off the ground structurally? Because I think, and that's what the structural group was going to kind of work with, but it may be different for each initiative, you know? I don't know. Maybe each group should answer that question. Like in an ideal world, you know, Ted, my question to you is, you're talking about establishing this commission. Well, it sounds a little to me like maybe this fits under the Conservation and Environment Commission, and they might not just be focused on it, or is it a separate commission? Or
Yeah, good
is it
question.
not? I don't know.
Yeah, good question. I think we need to maybe look at some other towns who have tighter regulations. And I know that Wellesley, Massachusetts has really tight regulations on tree cutting, and maybe figure out how they did it, you know? But I feel like what we're doing right now is getting the ball rolling. Maybe I'm being naive, but I feel like we're getting the ball rolling. And by presenting this to town council, you know, they become aware that there is a public desire for these things to start happening.
Yeah. And to go back to
I
the,
do know that
ahead.
that Greenwich and Hartford have really good tree ordinances, tree commissions. They do very good tree planning.
Yeah, I'm making that as a note for you in the chat. So all I was going to say is, if we don't think, not everything requires a commission, not everything requires, you know, so if what we're trying to get at is that we have an unanswered question that we really don't know how to solve, please put those in instead. Say, hey, we have an unanswered question, town council. This has to be resolved, but the ultimate issue is we need this from you. So I would make sure that as we go through this, think about it as you're revising these over the next few weeks. Make sure that that's very clear. If you just have a gap that you need to fill, I think it's okay to say, I don't know how to solve this. We think it might be a commission, or it needs to get tucked under a commission, but we need to resolve this. Good job, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Any other feedback for urban forestry before we move on to the next one? Because we're gotta get through more. Yeah, take a look in the chat. There's a lot of ideas in there for you guys. Good job. What one's next? Hey, public transportation. This group was Dan and Mary. I don't know if you guys got a chance to meet, because it looks like there's still some gaps here, but I do know some folks sent through notes through email. So Dan or Mary, are either of you on, and do you want to chat about where you are, or do you just have yet to meet?
So I will just say that we haven't had a chance to talk about this yet.
Okay, no problem. Do you have any initial ideas you want to share with us about like what you're thinking?
I'm not to be honest, I'm not really prepared for this. I must have missed that to be honest, I must have missed that I signed up for this one. So we'll get to work on it.
No problem. Okay. That was fast. We saved us some time. Great. Same thing with preventing homelessness. So the ones who signed up for this one, this was Rachel, Ed, Grace, Mary, and Kathleen. Where you guys stand on this one? I thought you guys had a pretty good conversation about this.
Yeah, we actually met last night, so we didn't get a chance to fill out the slide. But if it's okay with the group, I'll just I took some notes. If you want me to shoot through it really quick.
Yeah.
So you know, we had a pretty decent discussion. You know, talking about with so we basically broke it down into 3 sectors, right? We have equity, the environment and sustainability, and education. And part of the education comes in where we want to say that sustainability, we have to recognize that homelessness and affordable housing is really a regional issue, and we need to take responsibility for the residents and workers who may be experiencing struggles to stay in their homes or have recently themselves become homeless. So we are asking the council to gain an understanding of what causes homelessness and how we can sort of address that. So that's sort of the education component. Educate and inform council. Perhaps have regular checkpoints or check-ins before the council. We could put digital information on our town website on people experiencing housing insecurity or if they're homeless, where they can receive support. We also talked about, social media. One thing that we thought would be very impactful, but we're not sure of, if it's feasible, is to have homeless groups address the council, but also have people who are experiencing homelessness address the council. We think that that would be very powerful. But for obvious reasons, people may be reluctant to do that. We also want to talk about housing strategy, which is housing first, which means that finding a place for people, getting a roof over their heads before getting them any sort of support if they have sort of addiction issues that need to be alleviated. So those are all things that we sort of talked about. And then in sort of for the short, medium, and long-term goals, short term, certainly begin that council education, where we want to have people present and providing regular updates to council. And then sort of the other thing that we wanted to do is look at density or transportation corridors where we can build additional housing, or where multi-family housing would be a good fit. We have several corridors in town where there's semi-frequent bus service that makes it easier for people to access sort of day-to-day activities using public transportation. In the medium term, we're looking at town should open warming and cooling shelters for the homeless population, and not just during weather emergencies. And we also would like to see an inclusionary zoning requirement, which basically means, IZ means that you must include some affordable units if you're building multifamily homes. And there's a couple of examples of cities with IZ requirements, and one close to here is from the city of New Haven. They have an inclusionary zoning requirement. So you have basically a set aside of a certain number of units for people with different income levels. And then long term, what we said is the town should develop a plan to house people and figure out where that will be and what services to provide. And under that, there are a number of statewide and regional organizations already out there that we could work with. And then also long term, as a goal, we want to have a land trust, which is a sort of a community-based group that gets together and purchases land to build multifamily housing, sort of as a quick and dirty. I'm not sure if Rachel or Mary want to speak more to that, but that was just sort of the quick notes that I was able to pull together.
Thanks so much, Ed. I'll just add that of all the things that we've talked about over the last year, this category feels to me like the category where the West Hartford has no game. Like we have no services for, like there's no shelters, no nothing. And it's just like this glaring gap that we don't have resources for people experiencing homelessness or who are on the edge of becoming homeless. I mean, it's a spectrum. So I think there's like so much work to do, and I'm not an expert, but we got to start doing something on a town level.
So I know I hear a lot about efforts that are starting in the town to address panhandling, but I don't hear much about homelessness. So I mean, I'm just wondering if are they in denial? Like, our big issue is panhandling and not homelessness. This is not my area of expertise, so I have no idea how big either issue is for the town. I do know that every time I've mentioned homelessness, I'm told that it's handled at a regional level. And so that's why there are no homeless shelters in West Hartford. So I just put this out there to say that I think if that's the message that I'm hearing, I think maybe some other people, including counselors, might be hearing that. So just I would maybe think about that as you're deciding on what to put in the slides, because that'll kind of be their defensive reaction, maybe. That's for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think it's regional, but we're part of the region. Like we have to be part of the solution.
And affordable housing is complicated, but could be simpler if we were willing to tackle it. Panhandling as a topic is a really, maybe panhandling needs to be rethought of as a major concern for the town because it's okay.
And I mentioned in our meeting last night that I think we should umbrella panhandling into this as well and tease out and understand better the connection between homelessness and panhandling and how that works and how to address both.
Yeah.
So maybe the town's approaching it the other way, and maybe our suggestion is to flip it and focus on panhandling as a subset of this rather than homelessness as a subset of panhandling. I don't know.
I mean, if I'm
not
understanding
my
the way
area of expertise.
again, if I'm understanding what they're planning on doing with panhandling, when they say they're taking care of panhandling, it's that they're trying to eliminate the ability for people to be low income and ask for money in our West Hartford downtown center because it's irritating pretty much wealthy people who don't want to be bothered by people who are asking for money. So it's not a solution. It's more of a how we're going to restrict people from being able to be seen. So I don't know, maybe I'm just musing out loud, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I get the impression that if that's the core is let's sweep it away and pretend it doesn't happen here and make sure that we can't see people who are struggling and get them out of our very rich cultural center. So that's just me saying things on YouTube out loud to the world who's watching.
It's bad. It's bad for our clean image.
Of course it is. It's bad for the wealthy image that we're trying to portray about who West Hartford is. And it also does a lot of other things. Anyway, great job, you guys. Wonderful notes. I look forward to seeing those in the slides. There are a lot of notes for you also in the chat. Do you have any other comments? Anyone else on the, or we're going to get to the next slide. Anyone else on the call? Great. Let's move to the next priority. Trucking away. Get through it. Hey, the anti-racism slide. Now, I believe Chris was going to present this, but then she had to step off for a meeting and
I'm back.
Still back. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah. So our actions really relate, I think, pretty much to the next 12 to 18 months. We didn't split things off into a short and then get into a very long term topic. And there really is what's in front of you. One thing is to review the major policy and zoning programs and consider their impact on Black and other communities of color and rewrite them as needed to address equity issues. Because as we talked about different things, this seemed like a concrete way for the town council to approach this. So, and there are things that there's one thing we talked about that's not really in there, for instance, I think getting, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm confusing the clean energy thing, which I also worked on. It has to do with linking, knowing what's going on in the community and thinking about how that is reflecting our sustainability values, or whether things are going on that we aren't even really aware of. So it's finding out about things like what are the needs, what are the concerns, what are programs that are going on now, and the town governance, understanding those better and supporting them. Now, there is an equity.
Sorry, just that was one of the ones that I recommended. It was to reach out to the concerned parents of this is also
concerned parents of color.
Concerned parents of color, yes, that they already have a list of activities that they're interested in having the town invest in, and we should really
right. And you're right, and I didn't quite manage to get that in here. So the town is hiring an equity officer. I'm not sure exactly what it will be called, but the job description is not available yet, so we don't know exactly what that will well, we don't really know much about that at all. So we don't know if that is really addressing diversity within the town workforce, or if that will also be external facing and dealing with issues of diversity and equity in the town as a whole. So that's a big difference. That makes a lot of difference. But so I just characterize that as supporting the equity officer in identifying diversity and equity concerns, because I assume that that person will be reaching out to some of these groups, and then, but they'll need support from the town council, and that can be an issue. And they need support from the town council in approving and agreeing with actions to address those. And then support internship and employment programs for professionals who are Black, Indigenous, or other people of color, and programs that also support businesses owned by those individuals. And then the Sustainable CT does have virtual equity training. It has these series that it does periodically. Catherine has done that. I think, Catherine, you're just about the only one in the town of West Hartford who works for the town of West Hartford who has done this.
Catherine Bruns, I think, took that series.
Oh, that's right.
Well. Yeah.
I took it as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So our recommendation was, one of our recommendations for town council is to plan for and require 3 town representatives, at least 3. So this is the baseline really, to attend the winter series, which is 1 date in February and 2 dates in March. So there is time for that to get planned. Although if we take this to town council in January, that starts to get a little tighter as far as people getting lined up. And I know, Catherine, you may have some suggestions for how we could deal with the time tightness. I mean, from now is certainly far enough off for that to get planned, but time could get short for that. And one staff person, in other words, one person who works for the town government, one elected official, and one community representative.
Yep.
And that would tie those things together with what we're talking about, the sustainability issue.
Yeah, this is simply a recommendation that we complete one of the Sustainable Connecticut actions, which requires that one, and it's a director level staff person. So
that's right.
And I don't qualify. One elected official and one community representative attend Sustainable Connecticut's equity training, and they do offer it multiple times a year. So, so if we miss this one, they will reoffer it. But that was just kind of an easy ask, because I think the more our leadership attends trainings like this, and Sustainable Connecticut's equity training is fantastic. It's more about community engagement and two-way communication and learning as a process for implementing not only Sustainable Connecticut actions, but anything a town does. They focus on equity more as a communication process and making your actions and outcomes better for your entire community. And I think the more people we can encourage to go to that kind of thing and have that knowledge at our leadership level will benefit all of this work.
So this sounds like something
we
that
might
all
also
of us
suggest
should be participating in. I'm sorry.
You are absolutely welcome to attend. They are free and they are high quality trainings.
Mm-hmm. And Adrienne Billing-Smith, who is from Concerned Parents of Color, she did just get elected to our town council, so that's positive, right?
Kim, I think somebody else was going to speak. Is that Heidi?
Hi, thanks. I think it also is instead of assuming that the people who are most impacted will be consulted in the survey and also in deciding what action steps are, I think it would be advisable for us to be kind of explicit about saying that people who are most impacted must be, so that we aren't saying that this is what the town should do, but the town should talk to the BIPOC community and listen to what they say must be done.
Right. I think that's rolled into, maybe not explicitly because we were trying to be concise, but rolled into the supporting the equity officer, because if that person has an external facing responsibility, in other words, involved in diversity and equity concerns, not only within the municipal government, but out in the community, then that would be part of what that person does. I mean, it's in terms of mechanisms, like I absolutely agree that we should listen. We have to have a mechanism to do that. And it seems like now we will have more of a mechanism in addition to the Concerned Parents of Color's action item list, which I have to say, I don't think I actually found when I was looking on the website, which is why it's not reflected here in any detail. But that can all be investigated. In terms of the timing of this, I would hope that we can get some a director level person in municipal government, one elected individual and one community rep, or some, get some people involved as soon as possible, because not only will that allow us to get credit for that, but it will get more people educated sooner. That's my whole thing, is like get some people in at the next possible, at least some people in at the next possible training session. I think there's actually, I think there's maybe one going on right now, but so the fall one. So the winter one is actually the soonest, although two of them are in March, so it's really getting winter into spring, but whatever. And the last item is just to support additional programs at the library and support the presentation of those.
Any comments for Chris? You have 3 more minutes to comment to Chris. Otherwise, we'll move on. We have at least four more.
And if you have a comment about why this is a priority too, I mean, I just wrote this down as a draft statement.
I have a comment. I maybe just like a little, I want to make sure I understand what our, like the our sustainability advisory group's role is here. And I completely believe in these activities. I also have like this awareness that there are a lot of groups in town that have been working on these specific issues and for years. And I like, in addition to Concerned Parents of Color, is there anyone else? I mean, that would be my first step, is to make sure that all of these groups in town that exist, that they are aware of this sustainability like team, whatever that ends up being, and that we would need resource. I mean, we want to work with them and make sure that there's like a constant cross-section of anti-racism in all of these 11 11-1 priorities. Does that make sense to any? I mean, there is a lot of activity around here. So instead of like reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, I put a note in the notes that say continue to support other groups in the area that we're amplifying their message. Does that work?
Again, I think, I don't you see that as a part of what if the diversity and equity person who will be hired is also involved with community engagement. This is not just diversity in the workforce and equity issues in the town governance. I see that as a big part of what they would do and what they would expect to do. We're a little bit hamstrung right now, or a little bit at a disadvantage, because we not only don't have the person yet, the staff person yet, but we don't even have the job description. So it's hard to say what that person's responsibilities will be. And what we were trying to do is consider what the town will do.
So Christine is getting this information because I asked Human Resources to give us an update on where the hiring of that equity officer position was. And so they told me that the job solicitation would be going out shortly. They were working on the job description with West Hartford Public Schools Equity Office, and then the town's council would have made some revisions to it. So it actually hasn't even been posted yet. So I'm not sure what the timeline for hiring that person is, but Christine, I agree. I think yes, some of the work in this arena is on pause, but the nice thing is that there's a resource assigned and then there will be a person, whereas on some of the other things,
Right.
we don't know who
Right.
who the go-to person is, as we've realized. So I think this is great. You know, there are a couple of short-term things in this area that the Sustainability Advisory Group can recommend, like attending these equity trainings, and, you know, taking a look at some of our programming and working with the library. But other than that, I mean, I think you're right in the right place. I might even just take out that support the internships, because again, as Kim pointed out, whether it's through the equity officer or other groups, you know, I think there are people already focused on that. So we don't need to, I don't think we need to hone in on that specifically.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
My feedback.
There could also be a more concise message here that we could just put that, you know, reiterating there are other groups that are trying to advance this topic, and this topic is deeply like, maybe this slide is more about reinforcing the connection between why a sustainability team cares so much about anti-racism, because of the connection to environmental justice, because we're not able to get to, you know, some of the goals we're trying to accomplish for the broader vision of the community without making sure that we are also advocating for an anti-racist community. Perhaps that's the major goal of this particular slide, and it is less about what recommendations we have for them, except to continue to reiterate once again, there are really smart people who have been doing this work for a very long time and asking this town to do certain things. Listen to them, and here are their top asks, or something to that effect, because again, continuing to demonstrate that this is a concern of people from all backgrounds that live within West Hartford, I think is going to help send that message. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so that's what we'll do with this. We'll move forward. Okay, we have 27 more minutes to keep us honest, and so we got to get through 4 more priorities. I do not want to shortchange people, so we'll try to give 8 to 10 minutes per group. Let's see what happens. And then, all right, so food waste prevention and composting. We've got a lot on this slide, and this group was a big group. So Dan, Jay, Catherine, Preeti, Vanessa, Rachel, Kim, and Lindsay. Who's going to speak on your guys' behalf?
This is Dan. I think I'll do my best. Monday night, we had a tremendous discussion, and I think we had a little bit of a insider advantage as, Catherine Bruns, the recycling coordinator of West Hartford, was part of the group. So everyone was really excited to just kind of chat about, trash. And we got to the slides kind of towards the end. Catherine was good enough to put together this slide after the fact, with some input from us via email. And I think things to highlight on the slide, I mean, you can read it for yourself, but the numbers are just kind of eye-catching. I think it's a great way to, again, a nice inside advantage for us. The numbers speak for themselves regarding trash and waste. And we talked a lot about Monday night regarding the shutting down of the incineration plant where the trash currently goes. That's slated, I believe, for 2023. And I believe the town is right now, or should be very soon, getting ready to select, decide what they're going to do with their trash beyond that date. I think that's waste crisis, capital W, capital C. it might be something else, but I think that's what that's referring to. So there is that very visceral kind of current events hook that I think is ripe for discussion with the town itself because they have to make a decision. I love this line about normalizing sustainability practices. Just talk about uh, how to get people interested and how to get people comfortable with the idea of sustainability, like start in their kitchen. I mean, how much time do people spend in there doing whatever they do? My family composts. I finally convinced my wife after enough nagging to do it. So I think that's an awesome concept regarding the food waste prevention. And we also talked a lot about education and trying to get inside the classrooms and trying to even not only instruct the kids, but we talked about how much waste there is in the schools of food. And what's not on the slide is waste that goes on in commercial and food establishments and setting up policies and talking about policies that can help alleviate that waste amount. And we have a couple of things listed on the targets that would do that. Catherine talked about some grants she already sent out regarding I don't know if she's calling it a pilot program, but for curbside compost collecting. The grants haven't been approved yet, but that's kind of happening. And then also there are organizations we want to just raise awareness for people who might not know about them. It was kind of enlightening and illustrative that even the people who signed up to join this priority, we didn't all know about the things that maybe we thought, oh, everyone knows about that. For me, I knew basically nothing. So Food Rescue has a West Hartford chapter. You can sign up. They send you an alert to go pick up some food that's going to be thrown out, and you can deliver it somewhere else. It's a really cool thing that anyone can sign up for. So just some raised awareness about things that are already there that people can join. And then 24 months. Yeah, we really talked a lot about what's the best way to get the word out. I think Catherine is kind of in the process of dealing with what best practices are there and for her position, and she kind of spends a lot of time on that, I think. And we would love people's inputs, I think, from everyone. What catches your eye, what doesn't? Do flyers work? Do emails work? Kind of just groupthink that as to what would actually be effective to teach people. I welcome anyone else in the group to make any comments. I did a little bit of rambling, but I hope that got the tenor of the conversation we had. Anyone else want to speak up? I'll look at some of these chat comments.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Others? The group that wanted to add?
I just want to say that I see I had a typo in the very first paragraph. It's heightened education around food waste. That was the main thing, the topic of it in general in our public schools. I don't think people have any idea how much food is wasted. So this slide originally was food waste prevention, but I added composting to it because we wanted to talk about, of course, we want to prevent food waste in the first place, but how do we then deal with it, after we haven't been able to divert it through share tables and things like food rescue. But we had a really dynamic conversation on Monday night.
This might be actually a perfect example to demonstrate why I ask some crazy questions. Like 3 years ago, more than that, I don't know, Catherine Deviney, you tell me, years ago, we started with some urgency recycling, then food scrap, food waste composting at my children's school. We did waste audits. We had compost bins in classrooms. It would take me a while to describe any number of activities we pursued. There were some successes and some failures. What it came down to, though, is that without support, so there are a couple of things, without more education, and that is for the grown-ups in the room and for the kids, that's something I focus on even to this day, but without more education about understanding the value of our, food, where food comes from, the land, our water, our air, you are, it's an uphill battle. Second, without more support from and communication from school administration and the town, and just a lot of energy around these topics, I don't want to, you're not guaranteed to fail, but the chances of failure are high. And I say that because I have spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and resources, and, COVID hit and everything was out the window, still is to this day. But also, we were struggling even before COVID. And that was with me, a volunteer in the cafeteria lunchroom almost every day. So this, I would say, is a good example, especially when it comes to public schools. That is an important place because our children are a lot easier to educate than grown-ups, by the way. If you haven't done a lot of that in our community, children are a lot easier to have a conversation with, and it's still failed. And you can tell I'm like not happy about it, but I have reversed, and I am pursuing another avenue, but it all leads to these activities that require a connection to the land. And that's what our community doesn't have, grown-ups and children alike.
And I would like to just respond directly. And I really appreciate, like, I'm a public service novice. This is my first stab at all this. And I really appreciate, everyone who has put time and energy into these types of things in the past. And I totally get that, like, there could be some negativity around it, because it's almost guaranteed that these things are going to require sustained amount of energy that volunteers just, like, on their own can't provide. So I love this activity of getting new people into these groups. Like, we had this discussion. So, like, you're introducing me to a program in the schools I had no idea existed. Like, I'm interested in helping out to the extent that it happens again. And just, yeah, I think it's tough to get to underestimate just how much energy it takes to sustain these types of things when you don't have, a specific person on the town payroll doing it. And I just wanted to comment. Yeah, I think that the difference in experience here is really an asset. And I hope to be able to bring that kind of new, baby-faced energy to these kinds of discussions.
And I appreciate it as well. And I'm ready to start again. Absolutely. But something has to change. Do you see what I mean? So I think I come across as being a naysayer. I mean, I am the one usually who's willing to pick up and roll despite all the odds, but something has to be different. Otherwise, I am wasting my time. So as we speak, like, what do we do next to connect principals, the superintendent, the Board of Ed? And I have spoken to all these groups, keep in mind, and formed all of these relationships. But this is where, failed. The food share table that Catherine refers to, waste audits, clear pictures, photos, numbers, data. And if there are examples around the Northeast and across the country that we have followed, that we have imitated. And I just want, yes, it was an extensive program, at least in the effort that it took from a lot of people, and it failed. We need a connection. And for all of these programs that were, just referring to educating our youth, that Board of Ed town connection does not exist, at least as far as I know it. If that is one thing that comes out of this Sustainability Advisory Council, like something connecting those two bodies, I would be such a happy person.
So Kim, that should be your recommendation.
Can I just chime in here? So Kim has done unbelievable things for our schools, and it's really amazing. And I mean, I would like to pipe in that it hasn't failed 100%. I mean, COVID really came in right when I was hired to sort of be the point person in the town to go with all of Kim, to take what Kim did at Charter Oak and then grow it to the other schools. COVID happened. So that wasn't, you know, it got failed as this. I appreciate that, how disappointed you are, but it got put on the back burner because I've been going in the schools and talking with the principals, and they are eager to get on board, and I'm here to do that. So, and I'm looking at your prototype, all the hard work that you did, and, you know, the waste audit, all the information that I got from you and Catherine Devini. So I hope you take some faith that I really will work with that, and I am that town person that was hired to do that. So it is a very important. It's a very important priority for me. So I just want you to just
Catherine,
hear that from me.
awesome. And that is wonderful. That will probably make some difference, but there are elements of pressure from the buy-in and pressure from I say from the superintendent, but also parents, and the way this all relates, you know, if you're a part of the group about improving food, you know, or like addressing food justice in our town, like the way this connects to the meals that are served in our food or in our cafeterias. It is, Catherine, I appreciate that. It will take so much more. I mean, you know, the relationship with Tim, our nutrition services director, just for this food waste part. So it will take all of us. Maybe everyone in this meeting right now can, you know, sign up to march with you to the Board of Ed meetings, you know.
But just for a point of encouragement, so, you know, since that, you know, the town has hired someone dedicated, you know, part-time, though it is, and has allowed Catherine and me to sort of to convene this group of sustainability advisory committee. So I feel like, you know, these are steps, and we have these people with voices who are writing and putting pressure on all these things that are important to everybody. And I think that these are things that weren't there 2 years ago.
I'm going to make a suggestion for this group that I want you to just take heart in, because I can hear the amount of frustration and also the amount of love and effort that has gone into this particular challenge from some of you already. I would think about positioning this slide again as a what might need to be different based on the extensive experience that you have. Like what are the gaps that you see? What are the things in an ideal world, if it all went perfectly, you need this person's perspective to be different. You need this like write that out and then see if there's a couple of things that like bubble to the surface that are really obvious that the town council can put in motion. Like if you had the ability to change all the people immediately overnight to what you need them to do to make this all work out, think about it from that angle too. And all the other priorities, I think, could also take that same perspective. If all goes according to plan, if you knew all perfect information, and some of us have done more work than others on some of these particular issues, so you have deeper knowledge, so it's easier to say, oh, this was the roadblock that kept me from getting to where I need to go. I want you to imagine what it takes to remove the roadblock. And if the town council has any control over that whatsoever, frame it up that way and keep thinking about that over the next couple of weeks, about what exactly is the ask to town council, what exactly could they do to help us figure this out. And don't get stuck by it'll never happen, because it sounds like these things are happening and it does take a village to get some of this stuff done. I'm going to give this 2 more minutes. If anyone else has other comments, I know I'm talking a lot and other people are talking, but we're not going to get through the whole slide deck, it seems. So unless everyone wants to stick around for longer. So last comments for food waste prevention and composting.
Well, I can add a comment here. So based on the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management, which was a working group across the state of Connecticut, working on four different working groups to decrease waste in Connecticut. DEP put out a grant, $5 million, that municipalities could apply for, that would work on programs to decrease either food waste or increase recycling. And so I just want people to know that West Hartford has put out an expression of interest to be considered for a curbside food scrap composting program coupled with unit-based pricing. And I know that we did a pilot program before, but this program would look a little bit different. And I can elaborate later, or I can follow up with an email with people who are curious. But we have put out, we are applying for a grant grant monies to that end.
Awesome.
Fantastic. More comments for you in the chat. And next priority. Our next priority is Preeti, John, Luciana, Rachel, Kim, and Kathleen, which is also about food programs. So who's going to take this one?
I'll take it. So we had a great discussion. I like how this one goes with the one we just finished discussing. It's two ends of the same coin, I think. I think there's a long way to go here. I think our group talked about so many ways in which we are lacking. Under the description, I said that we need a more sustainable food system. We mainly talked about farmers markets, community gardens, and public schools. The nutrition level, I'll just stay on the public schools for a second. There's sort of a conflict of interest in how the public school nutrition programs are funded often. I don't remember if what I'm about to say applies to West Hartford or something else I read last week, so please correct me someone if I'm wrong, but I know that often we are 100% or in many cases like largely funding the nutrition that goes onto those trays, or even if we don't have trays, with the sales of junk food in the vending machines. So like that crap is being pushed to pay for the real food. And that is just like this perverse, weird system that's not working. So there's a lot to do there. I'll just keep reading and then we can talk. The ways that I categorized it was we need nutritious, organic, locally produced food. And even outside of public schools, I think that hitting all three of those targets is actually pretty difficult. And so what we'd like to focus on over on the 12-month around community gardens, there are vacant municipal lots that we could probably, people in our group thought that we could probably wrestle those into at least one community garden. We talked about different area food deserts kind of in our town, places that we need to focus on. We could do a lot to improve the farmers markets that are already in existence. And this next comment is not to knock the people at the, like I go to the farmers markets every week and the produce is fantastic and the products are great. But speaking broadly, the West Hartford farmers markets are kind of pathetic. They're very small. The hours are very spotty. There's not a lot of offerings. There's not very many booths. If you compare it to other towns very close to here, like the glorious farmers market in the West End, and then in other places as well, there's just a lot of room for improvement. Especially like longer seasons. I mean, we talked about ideas of how they could, like in the early months where there's not a lot of produce yet, like March, April, they could be selling native plants, they could be selling seedlings. I mean, there are indoor farmers markets in other towns during the winter. There's just lots of things to do that we could improve that. But at least for now, we could improve signage, the web presence. There's a lot of work in farmers markets. And then establishing a place, is this the share table? So I learned about this morning. This was at Bristow at least, where kids who like are ready and walking out of the cafeteria, if they did not open that juice box or they did not bite into that apple, they can put it on the table. And then other children who may be experiencing food insecurity can grab those on their way out. Is that what the share table is from the last slide? Could someone?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in this. And they're supposed to be shut down. A lot of schools might be doing it, and not what I wanted, but our nutrition services director officially, formally, we should not have shared tables. So, but yeah, that was the idea.
Due to COVID though.
Right.
No, this is pre-COVID.
It's
This is
pre-COVID. That was at least a year pre-COVID. Even in, I'm just going to jump in, Kim, sorry. So that was a state mandate. And so that would be, for me, one of the bigger obstacles of managing the food waste diversion and the food rescue and recovery, is that it doesn't even have to be an apple. It could be like a package of craisins that was completely unopened and unadulterated, and they are mandated to throw it in any food chain.
Lindsay, is that new? Is that new? Because it was not, that was that was our local nutrition services director.
The state one that I said that it was the state.
Because they have a lot of restrictions. Connecticut is super restrictive, but it's not banned. So
It was
unless this is,
previously, that was the pre-COVID mandate, and Tim's.
so it's restrictive, but it doesn't ban it. But Tim, I think because of some issues that, some confusion, some issues, it does in a way come down to food safety.
He told me that it was a statewide mandate, but
it's not. I mean,
extreme. It's a pretty extreme thing. So all of the share tables are like a down low situation, and specifically, like, it just is completely like a side operation that, depending on your teamwork and your built relationship with the cafeteria staff, is the only way that you can make those things happen, because they're worried. What's that?
We have 4 minutes left, and so I appreciate the perspective on the shared table. Probably not the best thing to present to a council if it's banned statewide.
So can I just, because I was a part of this group, can I just say, we had a great discussion, as Rachel said, but I like, if we have a chance to polish this slide a little bit, my suggestion would be really to take a step back and look at whose needs are not being met in our town.
So
if we could go to with farmers markets and community gardens and public school food, because there are a lot of people who've done a lot of work in these areas, and so that would be then maybe a next step. But
that's the next slide. The slide, if you could go to the next thing, and this was because exactly we need to assess, we need to educate ourselves. Could you go to the next slide?
And remember, guys, these are supposed to be rough drafts, so this is not final at all.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So maybe I did it wrong. Anyway, they're in the like Kim pointed to, the Sustainability Connecticut framework has good language and good itemized processes to go through, but we talked about establishing the Food Policy Council or Commission, and then conducting the community food assessment to collect that data. And then I had more there, but I didn't share it correctly, so I apologize for that. But Kim's right. It's not just a quick thing. It's like we need to, over the next 2 years and 3 years and 5 years, do something much deeper and more structural. I'll just cut it there for time.
More comments on healthy food options? I mean, again, you guys are off to a great start, and we clearly are passionate people.
Very quickly, Julia, I think it's a good slide. I think it would benefit from mentioning a carbon footprint angle of food, for instance, food miles, and foods that have a lower or a smaller footprint. And the second thing is, what about packaging? A lot of processed food that might be healthy, but is packaged to the hilt. Is there any emphasis on that?
Comments, I added them to the chat. Others? Nope. Good notes from Luciana. There's a lot of passion around this topic. Okay, so it is 8:29. We keep you till 8:30. We have technically 3 more priorities to go through. Do you guys want to stay here another 20 or 30 minutes tonight, or do you want to book another time to actually finish this before our next meeting, or at in the next week or 2? I'm also thinking we might need to start meeting more frequently if we're going to have any sort of deadline of even finishing by February. I'm seeing let's rebook. Other people got to drop. Can't stay any longer. All right. We're going to send out a doodle poll and we are going to ask you guys for some times. I know that the next couple weeks get a little crazy with Thanksgiving, so I will put a lot of different dates open. And Catherine, whether you can join us, that would be great. If you can't, we can also set this up separately to continue the conversation. I'm just not sure if we're allowed to do that formally. So you can tell me offline if that's got to be something we coordinate. But that is what we will do.
No, we would want to do it as a public meeting. Yep.
Great. Well, then we are going to schedule another public meeting. Just to keep flipping to the very, very end. Just keep going, Catherine Burns, all the way to the end. Make sure we don't have anything else that we've got to cover. A couple more priorities. That's what we'll go through the next time. We had appendix slides in here, and then we didn't put a. I forgot to put in the roundtable slide, which we've obviously run out of time for tonight. So please check your emails. Catherine's been sending us a lot of cool updated upcoming events and also flags them. Thank you guys for your time this evening. Does anyone have any final comments or thoughts they have to throw out there before we close out?
I just have a question about our meetings that we've had. Do we need to save the notes from them?
Yes.
Okay.
And send them to Catherine.
Okay.
But they don't have to be everything you guys said. They could just be general summaries.
It's just, yeah, notes. Yep.
Catherine, what do you want? You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm on mute. So I don't necessarily need your notes if the bulk of what you discussed was then kind of reiterated tonight or captured in your slides.
It's on the slide. Yeah, pretty much.
Then
Yep.
I think that is just fine. I will double check with Corporation Counsel, but way at the beginning when we organized this committee, that was my understanding from them that would be acceptable for this group. The way the structure was set up, that if we held some outside meetings, as long as what was discussed was reported back during a public meeting, it was going to be all right.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for everything. Obviously, we're getting a lot of great ideas out there. The whole point of the beginning brainstorms is that, we got a lot of ideas that go in a lot of different places. We'll spend the next couple weeks polishing. Catherine, what would also really help is, can you give us a sense if we could potentially get on the January or February agenda? How long does it really take for us to get on a town council agenda? How busy are they really? So that could help us with our own work schedule, working backward and with managing expectations. But wow, a lot of passion, a lot of great ideas, a lot of incredible things. Again, I would challenge us all to go back and rethink, what ask do you have of the town council to help you get through a hurdle? What would be if you could have the magic wand and you really got to control this, what are all the things that need to be true? And, what barriers have you already articulated? They're like, I need this cleared. Get this out of my way, town council. You need to pass this ordinance. There is this law I ran up against. I need your support in this. Make it very about like something that they can do for us. But I also think it's totally reasonable for us to frame something as, this is a thing that the town has to prioritize. And we can figure out your role in doing so, but it is very important to us as residents, and you need to help us move this ball forward. That's my last parting thought on that. And I will send out a doodle poll between now, and that means December 1st is not our next meeting, but it'll be the meeting after that. So keep the December 1st date open, and I hope you all have a really great night.
Hey, thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.